Hello everyone, Edwin Learnard here. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be dissertating and talking about legendary martial artist Bruce Lee. And firstly, I wanted to start off, I guess this is a little bio, non-astrological info. He was born on November 27th, 1940 at 7:12 a.m. in San Francisco, California. He died tragically on July 20th in 1973. There's much speculation and conjecture surrounding his death. Movie producer Raymond Chow stated Lee died from an allergic reaction to a muscle relaxant proponent in I believe it's Equagesic, and doctors said death by misadventure. And a neurosurgeon had stated Lee's death could have been caused by cannabis or the proponent in Equagesic, or just simply the Equagesic for whatever reason it would be. But I believe that was also because he theorized it was from the compound in Equagesic for the muscle relaxant that was in that drug. And to this day there are numerous theories regarding this. He was one of the more prolific fighters of our time. It's a shame that some people refer to him as mainly an actor when really, he had, extraordinary martial art ability, and one of the more, I guess, prolific martial artists, in any era. And I think he could, if he was around today, even a number of the UFC fighters could have a problem with him. Anyway, I want to get to, I'll get to the astrological aspect of this video. First, he had the Sun in Ascendant in Sagittarius. Obviously jocular, very jovial, philosophical, athletic, as we know, frank, fearless, not the type of person that would allow anyone to order or drive him. Had gives him a good easygoing disposition. The fact that the Sun and Ascendant were both in Sagittarius probably would indicate really not much duplicity, since the projection of self, or the rising sign or facade, is the same as the inner self, the Sun sign in this case. So therefore the outer and inner self basically was able to conjoin as one. He had the Moon in Scorpio, and this gives intensity to the emotions, very determined, inordinate willpower, something where he probably was very secretive and didn't reveal or divulge much personal info about himself to many others. He also had a stellium in Scorpio in the 11th house, and this could give much fixity and purpose, emotional intensity in matters connected with friends, objectives, and aims. His Moon conjuncted Mercury in his natal chart, and this could have given him an ability to verbalize emotions and good intuitive intellect, which is vital when you're in the profession that he was in, because a lot of your success, of course, is attributed by your skill, but also some of it is based on your instinct ability, instinctiveness in those fights as well. Majority of his planets were above the horizon, and that would emphasize being more objective than subjective, and someone more extroverted than introverted. The fact that his Sun conjuncted his Ascendant probably is what gave him real ample energy, exuberance, vitality, almost inexorable, I believe his energy was, and you needed that, of course, to be the kind of fighter he was as well. Another thing is that his he had a fixed T-square in his chart, and may have had multiple ones, but the one that I'm going to talk a little bit about is he had one that involved Jupiter and Pluto and Mars in his chart. And a fixed T-square can be very methodical, of course, fixed in energy, could be immutable, intractable, but much persistence, willpower, and determination to follow through on their objectives. And I don't know if there were many people as determined and vigilant as he was in the field that he was in. The fixed T-square did involve Jupiter, Pluto, Mars, the one that I am talking about from his chart. And of course, Jupiter, is maybe, part of the sports, the athlete, part of himself. And, Mars, of course, has to do with energy, competition. And Pluto is, the regenerative, or I guess the transforming, element in perhaps in a person's chart. And in those three areas, could show that he may have been, very resolute and fixed in those, three sectors of his life. He had the chart ruler in the 5th house conjunct Saturn. Now this could show somebody that is enthralled with games and sports, and sports, obviously, as far as the martial arts, played an integral role in his life, obviously. But the fact that it conjuncted Saturn in his chart gave a little bit more serious side to even his fun things that people might look at as something like as pure enjoyment. He pursued with a lot of diligence, and took those matters obviously very seriously, because I'm talking about him right now, and he was a legendary martial artist. So he obviously was someone that even took sports competition very seriously, which helped enable him to be one of the greatest martial artists of all time. Another thing I've noticed in his chart was his ruler of his 8th house had conjuncted his 12th house cusp, and that's something I think could be connected with the mystery surrounding his death. And somebody with the the 8th house ruler, in this case, wasn't in the 12th, but it was conjunct the 12th house, so the description can, I believe, in my opinion, can still apply. Somebody that could die at a hospital. Now, he was rushed to the hospital, but he may very well have died before going there, but still the hospital had some involvement in this in this whole scenario, because that's where he was brought to at the and on the near the moment or moments of his death. Now, as ruler of his 9th house in the 12th conjunct the 1st house cusp. Now, this could be somebody that, on some level, despite the fact I believe he was a philosopher, he could have been, somewhat secretive regarding some of his own personal philosophies and vantage points on life. The fact that this conjuncted his 1st house cusp, could very well have made him the quintessential philosopher, and somebody that really enjoyed sharing his philosophies with others. And I believe he was a philosopher as well, in addition to being a martial artist. Another thing that I noticed, in his chart, the ruler of his 10th house was in the 8th house, and that could give, or conjuncted, actually, I'm sorry, the ruler of his 10th had conjuncted the ruler of his 8th, which could show that maybe, the 10th house, which rules, prestige, I guess, career, notoriety, and, recognition, that his death, was going to be one where it was going to be given, a good amount of recognition and attention to it, not just because of who he was, as far as a fighter, a legendary, venerable fighter, but because of the elements connected with his death and the fact that it was so shrouded with mystery. Another thing that he had was he had Pluto in the 8th house, and that could be somebody that could transform others' lives dramatically, as far as the transforming, regenerating urge. And he impacted a lot of people, and many people that he didn't personally know. I mean, the prodigious fan base that he acquired during this time, and a lot of people in that period, especially near the time he was alive and the time he died, had emulated him. People that wanted to, were more encouraged, I think, to get involved in martial arts, and that was, a lot of it was attributed to Bruce Lee, I believe. Another thing was, at the time of his death, was that there was a transit with Pluto that conjuncted his natal Neptune in his 10th house. Now Neptune, can rule, drugs, is connected with that, and he very well may had died, in connection with that, at least according to, one of the main, I guess we could say, hypotheses, or whatever the doctor, had stated at that time, could have very well been, something connected with drugs. And also Neptune is something where, it's a planet of confusion, and, there's actually a lot of confusion and conjecture and speculation that is surrounding, his death, obviously. So, when he died, it's no surprise that the circumstances were going to be, something where, we couldn't really, have, maybe a lot of people haven't ascertained 100% as of yet. So, anyway, well, people, that is going to do it. I just want to say another thing. I believe he had the ruler of the 12th in the 8th house, so that's another indicator of, why things were, a lot of people were confounded, I believe, and, why his death had an aura of mystery to it. Well, people, that will conclude this YouTube astrological segment for me dissertating about martial artist, legend Bruce Lee. In my next astrological segment on YouTube, I'm going to be dissertating and talking about, it's going to be the Ascendant conjunct Mars in a natal horoscope. And two things I want to get with you on before I head out. Firstly, the stars may impel, but do not compel. And secondly, never isolate any single astrological element, aspect, planetary placement, position, configuration, influence, or what have you, and make an analysis on a person, astrologically speaking, based on this alone. Because a person, astrologically, is the sum of all their components in their natal chart, and not just one. Until next time, people, stay well.